then we will get ready here. So welcome everyone to our Tuesday, October 11th meeting of the Administration and Public Works Committee. Welcome to everyone here. We're going to start with the first item on the agenda, which is the roll call. Carla.
Chair Garitano.
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino. Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Edens. Here. Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Hopper. Councilmember Jaxie.
Here.
Councilmember Nyhan.
All right, thank you for that. We'll move to the second item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes for the September 6th meeting. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes? Councilmember Farmer with the motion, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Is there any question or comment on the minutes? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the minutes are approved. And the next item on the agenda is public participation. Do we have any public participation? Carla, please read the card.
We do. Councilmember Laura Nemens, please.
Chair Garitano,
Could I,
after learning that there will be an update on the item I was planning on speaking on, I'd like to withdraw my comments until that time when it's appropriate.
okay, sounds good. And yep, we have made that, put that on the agenda to give an update there. So we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is administration. No items under for information. So the next section is the for action. So we have the audit firm, RFP and recommendation. Mr. Cross.
Thank you. Committee, as you all know that per the city charter, we are required to go out for bid for the public accountants, the audit firm, to audit the city's books of record. And they do the CID, the Crossings Community Improvement District books at the same time. We have reached the fourth year. 2022 was the last year of the 4-year period of time. Reuben Brown were the auditors of record to audit the city's books and have done so actually going back to 2006. But we have gone out to bid each and every 4 years during that period of time. There are a very finite number of audit firms that are qualified to do municipal audits, most of which I have worked with over my almost 50 years of being in the accounting world and so forth. We did send out, as you saw in the documents that are attached to the agenda, we did send out bids to a number of firms, but only two audit firms replied to our RFP. That being Reuben Brown, the second one being Showalter and Jabouri. And so we reviewed those, Ms. Kaiser, myself, and our treasurer, Mr. McGowan, and based on a number of factors that are spelled out in the memorandum that we prepared, the three of us, the city administrator, the finance officer, and the treasurer. We identified the points that we looked at when we were reviewing the qualifications of the two audit firms. Price is not the sole determinant. In fact, Reuben Brown's price in the quoted price is a little bit higher, but as you probably read in the memorandum, there's a lot more that goes into it. There's quite a financial impact for a new audit firm coming in for a city as complicated as Wildwood in terms of getting up to speed and trying to understand the audit and everything that is behind it. So continuity is a big part of this. To cut to the chase, myself, finance officer Don Kaiser, and treasurer Larry McGowan are recommending that we select Reuben Brown as our auditors for the next 4 years. There is a fee schedule that was also attached to the agenda. Like everything else, the audit fees have gone up. We've been pretty successful in holding the line on increases year over year from Reuben Brown, and we've enjoyed very competitive rate structure from them. This year, As true as everything, we are seeing a significant increase in our audit fees. The dollar amounts, it's about $9,100 for just the audit. There is another audit called a single audit fee, and some years you have a single audit and some don't. What defines a single audit is if the city obtains more than $750,000 in a 12-month period of time in the calendar year of the audit from federal dollars. And we did not do so in 2021, I'm sorry. But we will potentially in 22, but certainly in 2023, which is when the 5-year period, this 2022 is the last of the 4 years. So long story short, we would like to recommend that this committee and ultimately, hopefully the council will approve the reappointment of Reuben Brown as the city's auditors for the years 2023, 24, 25, and 26. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Do you have any questions or if there's a motion? Councilmember Farmer.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendation to continue with Reuben Brown.
Anyone that would like to second that motion? Councilmember Jaxi. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Motion passes. All right, we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is number 2, review of the 2022 administration budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a number of budgets to review this evening. We have provided you with links to the budgets through the share drive, but also we did include copies of the various budgets that we will be reviewing tonight to the agenda. So I will start with the administration department's budget, which does include the economic development department. We just reviewed that budget just before in the economic development committee meeting just prior to this meeting. That budget was approved unanimously. Small budget, so we've taken care of that. Again, you all can read as well, if not better than me. So I don't need to go through the operating expenditures as it relates to the administration department. But I'll just, if there's any questions about any specific line item, I'm more than happy to answer those. The budget itself reflects increases where we feel that increases are warranted. The costs have gone up, but also the overriding principle for the finance officer and I is that we present a balanced budget to ultimately to the mayor and to the council. And in so doing, it's incumbent on me as the city administrator to go through, and I have to unfortunately be the heavy that has to meet with the department heads and try to reasonably reduce their budget to make sure that the city lives within its means, just as every one of us do in our home budgets. So I cannot have expenditures exceeding revenues because then we are not being, as a city, fiscally responsible. So I've had to make some cuts from what was presented to me, but I have reviewed the reductions in expenditures with the department heads. They are in agreement with my suggestions, and this budget reflects those reductions. So there's nothing that is in the administration budget anyway that would jump out. I might point out just a couple quick line items under operating expenditures. The second line item, which is called Community Relations Economic Development. As I said, the Economic Development Department, if you will, is part of administration. And that jump from $8,000 to $18,000 reflects a $10,000 line item that we put in there, which is a marketing campaign for Live, Work, Play in the city of Wildwood. It's a new marketing campaign that we will be undertaking in 2023 to market Wildwood. And that's all part of why I hired Thomas Lee, who's doing a great job so far in reaching out to businesses, has some great ideas, and that reflects that. The rest of the items, there really aren't any significant increases. In fact, you'll see decreases in line items like maintenance of the building or the grounds and so forth. I think we need to be a little more fiscally responsible. I will say, and this will be a common theme throughout all the budgets that we review here tonight. And I said it earlier, the city needs to learn to live within its means. So this coming year, 2023 is going to be, I'm going to keep a close rein on the expenditures. We have to, because our revenues are not increasing. We don't have any sources of revenue. You all are quite aware of that, but expenses are going up 8, 9, 10, 30%. They are climbing each and every year. We're putting in new parks, we're putting in trails. So those aren't budgets that we'll be talking about here tonight, but I will be talking about those next week. We have to be careful in terms of how we put on our events, how we handle everything with the city until we find new sources of revenue. Because we've had 2 opportunities, which for various reasons we have not pursued to bring new revenue to the city. And so we have our pool tax and we have our tax from the courts. I'm sorry, our fines and fees, et cetera, from the courts. And we have grants and so forth. But the grants are for capital items, not for operating items. So I just want you all to understand where I'm coming from, because I'm the one that sits there and approves the bills. And I have to be a lot more, I'm instructing the staff, the directors in particular, that if they don't have the money in their budget, we're just not going to spend it. I had to come to you all at mid-year for mid-year adjustments and ask for $500,000 over and above the approved budget for 2022. I really don't want to do that again. So that anyway, I might be getting off track a little bit from this budget. So let me go back to what I said. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you may all have. I thought it might be helpful just for you to understand where we're coming from when we are putting together a budget of this magnitude and this amount of detail. So questions?
Okay, questions? I see Councilmember Clark with their hand up.
Yeah, I don't have any questions on a specific line item. I just was remembering, and maybe this comes later, but last year I remember something that was very helpful that said some efficiency measures that showed the percent increase in expenditures. And it was in the budget. Does that come later? Or are we going to have that again? Because that was really helpful.
Councilmember Clark, yes, that is a document that we believe is helpful to the council members, and that will come later when we complete the total budget book. Right now, this is the draft budget, subject to change to the extent that each of the committees look at their individual budgets, and then it goes to the full council. But once we get an approved budget, then there's a lot more schedules that are produced, and so yes, that would come later.
Any other questions or Councilmember Edens?
I commend you, and I don't envy your job on this, because you were given a task by a majority of council members who spoke against, although there were some timing issues, something like Wayfair reform. I wasn't one of those, but I certainly hope in the future we can touch base on that again as a revenue stream, because what we have is just not sustainable. And I have found that when I have explained that the costs are going up to my residents, as opposed to we're just doing a lot more and spending a lot more, they are able to understand right now, because inflation is hitting them. And so I think it's a more receptive audience maybe than we had a year ago. I know from speaking with my residents, when I mentioned that we had a concrete bed that was up 30%, that they were shocked, but also when they took time to reflect on that, not very surprised, and also impressed that we've been really managing to do what we've done as a city. But we do need to have a talk again as a council about where we go from here. We just can't keep saying no, 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 and then still have the needs that we have.
Any other discussion? And seeing that, we will look for entertain a motion for approval of the budget that was just presented. Is there anyone that would like to make that motion? Made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Councilmember Clark. Any other discussion on the motion for approval Sure, Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, so as Ms. Eden said, I agree. Steve, I don't envy the position that you're put in to figure this stuff out, but I do think, as is often the case when you're dealing with your home budget, I think that we probably, as a council, need to be reminded frequently that we are under some pretty tight constraints for reasons that are in a lot of ways somewhat out of our control. So as much as, you know I care very much about the watershed, as that's my little purview to look over, and we have talked about spending several $100,000 on different recreation facilities at community park, things like that. I am of the opinion that we need to make sure that our basic needs are covered, that the roads are done, that we have sidewalks, that we have things, rather than, we've got a lot of great trails and parks, as you said, and that's something to be proud of. But, we probably need to be cautious about throwing lots and lots of money at things that we already have when we're missing the things that we might need. So I'm looking forward to seeing the big budget book and how we can get through it.
Right, we have a motion on the floor. Seeing no other hands up here, all those in favor of approving the motion to approve the administration budget, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay. Then we'll move on to the next item there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bear with me. I just want to make sure I have something in front of me. This is another quick one. This is the ARPA fund. We adhere to fund accounting here in the city. Those of you that are in the private practice, that's a little bit different. In some cases, some of the statements do mirror what typically would be an income statement that you would typically see in private industry. But fund accounting identifies funds that where the revenues and the expenditures are specific to, say, the source of those funds, the use of those funds, or other specific purposes. The money that we received through the Recovery Act, which was $7.15 million, we did create a separate fund. We did not want to commingle those funds into the general fund. We wanted to make sure they were carved out and totally visible. You do not recognize the revenue unless there is an offsetting expenditure. That is per the accounting for municipal governments. You recognize the revenue when you do the expenditure, and vice versa. So when you look at the schedule that was included with your package for the ARPA fund, you'll notice that 6.75 million is identified both on the revenue side and on the expenditure side. That is the amount of the contract that we signed with Spectrum. It is anticipated, since I've put in the full amount in on both the revenue and the expense side, that we would spend all those funds in 2023. Given the most information I learned as of Friday, that may not all occur. There may be a little bit that might roll into 2024, but for all intents and purposes, this is just a quick fund. So the bottom amount that remains in the fund is interest that is being earned on that, and interest rates have gone up. So earnings rates have gone up a little bit. So this is just a quick one page. And the reason for that is simply because we keep those funds separate from the general fund.
Jaxie.
Just morbid curiosity, what happens?
That would be rolled into the general fund at the end of closing out this fund, when we close that out. But I suspect there'll be additional dollars coming from either reimbursement or additional dollars from the federal government. So that'll stay in there until such time as that fund is formally closed out sometime in the future. Then those interest earnings then would be brought into the general fund.
So do you want an approval for this over
Yes.
here as well?
Each one, I'd like a motion and a second and a vote for each of the budgets, please.
Okay, so we're going to do this one for the ARPA. So do we have a motion for approval? Well, Councilmember Jaxie. There's a second on it. Councilmember Edens, any other comments or discussion on that motion here? Again, this is for the ARPA Fund 2023 budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Right, motion passes. Then next, we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is the review of the 2022 city clerk budget, number 3.
Yes, and I'm just bringing something up here real quick. Okay. All right, so again, everything I just said before relates to this budget as well in terms of remaining within a balanced budget. The top part of the attachment that you received has to do with personnel expenditures. And in regular salaries, I want to point out that is for the city clerk and the deputy city clerk. But you'll also see a line item related to elected and appointed officials. And for those of you that may not know, that includes the $86,800 that is in the budget for 2023. That includes the mayor's stipend that he receives on an annual basis, as well as the council members, the 16 council members, the monthly stipend that you all receive, and that makes up that number. The rest of the items, again, I won't bore you with going through each of the details. When you compare 2023 to 2022, not too much expense. You will notice that we've built in a fair amount of money for election expense, which is the second line item under operating expenditures. And that would be for the April 2023 election. So we've built in some dollars there. Those costs have gone up. The rest of the line items are very much in line with not only 22, but for previous years. So I'll leave it at that for now and just make myself available for any specific questions that you might have regarding the budget for Megan's department. And that's why Megan is out there. She just wants to make sure that we don't slash her budget. I'm joking. She handles her budget very, very well. She's very on top of her budget, and when expenses come through, she wants to make sure they're charged to the right department and what they're for. So I'm glad she keeps a close eye on her budget.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, just a quick question, and then I'm happy to make the motion. But I'm kind of curious, especially when it comes to personnel expenses. Are these basically just like cost of living adjustments? Because they don't seem like they're increase a tremendous amount every year. I'm just kind of wondering how that usually works.
What is your specific question?
Well, I mean, like I know that we kind of talk about it every year if people are going to get salary adjustments and things like that. I'm just wondering, like, because the cost of living adjustment jumped a huge amount last year as compared to other years, it doesn't, on the surface, it doesn't look like we're planning all that another giant jump. Perhaps we are, and I'm just not seeing it.
The municipal budget for 2023 does include a wage increase for staff.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into any further detail than that. It was discussed with the mayor. I learned some information today, and I've asked our finance officer to provide me with some details about what I learned today. And I'm going to have another discussion with the mayor. The budget, however, in its current form, does include a reasonable salary increase for staff, comparable to what I am aware that other cities, our surrounding municipalities are doing. But I want to pursue that a little bit further. So
great.
There's a nice increase. If you'll recall, we provided a 4% wage increase to the staff last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to make sure we have a relatively small staff and they do a lot of things. So I just want to make sure that we're planning accordingly. But other than that, I'm happy to make the motion to approve it.
All right, Councilmember Edens, I saw your hand up.
I'll second the motion. I just had a question though. For digitizing city records, is that to make our internal life easier so that staff can search documents and perhaps things that are out in offices could be moved to storage and, or is this for residents where they can search history of plats or something like that on the website?
The line item that's for the city clerk budget is the former of what you just said. It is for internal use. It
Okay.
is digitizing records that will, number one, give us a better handle on what we have, mainly prospectively. But Megan is also has undertaken the task to digitize the records that we currently have. It will help with record retention and record destruction when it is appropriate, when that time comes. It will enable us to do a quicker search to answer sunshine requests, but it is for internal purposes. This is not for residents to be able to search files.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, I'll make a comment here. Under memberships 204, that's the municipal league for both St. Louis County and the state.
It's a host of things, and I will tell you. So that includes the Missouri Municipal League, the Municipal League of St. Louis. So for instance, the Missouri Municipal League is $5,384. $7,300 is for the Muni League of St. Louis. The rest of the items are very, very small in terms of organizations that Megan belongs to. And the, for municipal clerks, but the two big items are the MML and the Municipal League of St. Louis. And that is $12,700 of that amount.
For both of those. Yeah, I
those
just
two.
wanted to make sure you're aware. There is a dues increase that'll be coming from the MML. It's the first
That number
increase.
includes that increase, that 5,384.
Oh, you got the new?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Then you answered my question. Thank you. All right, Sina, any other questions or comments? All right, then, we've got the motion on the floor for approval of the city clerk budget. All those in favor, say aye. Anyone oppose or abstain? And that motion passes. Next on the agenda is the court budget, 2022 court budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll follow the same format here. I will point out on the personnel expenditures, for those of you that do not know, the line item, the second from the top, which is elected appointed officials, that is the judge. That is the salary for the judge, municipal judge, Mr. Bierman. And then down below, these are costs that are generally in line with everything that we have spent so far. I will make one comment that it is still important to the city to make sure that to the extent possible, departments or events or anything pay for themselves. In the case of the courts right now, our expenses exceed our revenues. And we're looking into that. It has been brought up in the past, so you all are aware of that. But I am pulling together a meeting that will include the mayor. It will not include the mayor. I take that back. It will include the municipal judge, the court clerk, the captain, the prosecuting attorney, and myself, and probably the finance officer to review the revenue stream, how we are bringing in revenues into the court, what we can change and what we cannot change. I just want to make sure that to the extent that we can, and as you all know, Senate Bill 5 handcuffed us quite a bit in terms of what the city can do in terms of getting fees and that sort of thing. So the captain is absolutely precluded from, mandating for his officers to go out and write so many tickets a month or anything like that. Certainly can't do that. But so it's a meeting of those that are involved in not only in writing the tickets, but processing the tickets and all the way up to what takes place in this room on Wednesdays, a couple of Wednesdays of the month, when the judge has some discretion in terms of what fines he can levy to those that have been sentenced to whatever. And so I want to make sure that the city is maximizing to the extent possible. So So there's a potential, potentially, there might be some additional revenues from that area. But right now, the expenses are in line with where they should be given the structure of our court. There are other options with that other cities have taken potentially with a municipal court. In other words, they don't have a municipal court in their cities any longer. They have the county take that over. I do not believe that is in the best interest of Wildwood residents to, it's a service that we offer. I'd like to see it pay for itself, and I'm working to try to get it to that point. But even though it's slightly revenues are slightly under expenses, I think it's still important that the residents can come here as opposed to going way up north or way south. I think that would create more of a problem than just a small shortfall in revenue. So just again, full disclosure, just wanted to give you all an idea of where things stand. So again, if anybody has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Anything else, Joe? Councilman Farmer?
I was just going to make the motion to approve the budget as presented.
All right. Is there a second for the approval of the court budget? Councilmember Clark, is that second for approval, or do you have?
I
a
will,
question?
I will second it, but I do have questions.
Sure, go ahead.
I noticed on the accomplishments, the first two accomplishments of 2022 are the same as the first two accomplishments on 2021. And I'm just wondering, are these ongoing, or it looks like they have endpoints on them? So I didn't know if those were those have actually been accomplished or not. And should we add to this the use of the scanner for the council meetings as an accomplishment?
I will answer your first question first, which is the 2022 accomplishments numbers 1 and 2. Yes, those are ongoing. And they are generic enough that they should in fact be true for any year. Demonstrated good stewardship of taxpayers' dollars. That is a goal. They've reached that goal. I'm sorry. Let's see where we're in the court. You know what? I went one too far. Amended procedures to allow defendants and attorneys to enter pleas and pay without appearances. That is something that Laura is still doing. Started accepting pleas, payments, probation correspondence through e-filing. Again, I'm not sure. I was not involved in the development of these. This was something that I asked Dawn to work with the department heads in terms of identifying the accomplishments. So I'm a little behind the 8 ball there in terms of being able to give you a specific answer. So that was the first part of your question. And I'm sorry, can you tell me the second part of your second question?
If I may, Chair. The question was about adding to the accomplishments, the use of the metal scanner for the council meetings.
The metal detector. Okay, as an accomplishment in 2022 for the court. That's an accomplishment that really is an administration, not necessarily the court. The court already has that. We in the administration department implemented that then for the council meetings. That'd been something that I personally had been pushing for a couple of years. And we were able to get that through, thankfully, with the vote of confidence by the council members, but that would not be a court accomplishment.
Well, I'd say it's an accomplishment to put on your list.
I'm sorry.
I would say it's an accomplishment to put on your list.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass that on to Dawn. Thank you.
So I think we got that second motion, and so we still have to vote there. So seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor of approving the 2022 court budget, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the motion passes. So we'll move on to Public Works. We have two for information items. The first is the structure 3-107 update. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I did want to take this opportunity to give you an update. As you know, we've been working to address concerns with our structure 3-107 on Wild Horse Creek Road. That's a 11-foot by 7-foot box culvert structure located about 2,000 feet south of Centaur Road on Wild Horse Creek Road. Wanted to let you know some of the more recent work that we've done on that project. Did reach out to Geotechnology, a local geotechnical engineering firm that we've worked with previously, to get some additional thoughts on our approach on that project and to see what other observations they could provide. So Tony Roth has come out and met us on site and reviewed the work we've done so far. Tony has put together a proposal for us that are moving forward with to actually do an additional ground penetrating radar scan of the bridge of the box culvert and the roadway. So that work is actually scheduled for next Tuesday, midday from 9:30 to 1:30. So we plan to be doing that work next Tuesday, and we will close the road temporarily at that time to allow that work to be done. So if you're driving by, I think we have a message board out right now flashing that message. We're trying to communicate that to the public. So wanted to let you know that work, and the idea there is to get the scan completed to see what it would show relative to the potential for voids essentially under the structure, under or around the structure. So we'll do that work and have that information back relatively soon. With the road closure, we'll be publicizing that later this week on e-newsletter and social media and other avenues. We were in touch with the emergency services in the school district as well to notify them of that work. Also working with Geotechnology, they referenced or put us in contact with an out of St. Louis firm contracting company that specializes in the repair of slopes that are not stable. And we met with, it's a company called GSI on site, and they've actually put a proposal together that we are looking at. But bottom line is I wanted to ensure or be confident there weren't any temporary fixes for this project that we would consider implementing, because we're looking at a situation where the structure is still some months out before we could build it, and we have to obtain easements from the national parks, from the state parks on the one side, Babbler Park, and then a private property owner on the other side. So we have easements to obtain from both properties. So I wanted to be sure there wasn't a temporary fix that didn't entail right-of-way acquisition that we might consider doing. And so that was the thought there. And so we have a proposal from this firm to potentially do a slope repair to stabilize the wing wall that is of a concern with the structure. And we're evaluating that right now. The cost of that work is almost $105,000. So it's very pricey to do, a lot more expensive than I was hoping for, quite frankly. So I'm not seeing that as something we would probably entertain doing. I was hoping it would be much cheaper. It would provide us an opportunity to maybe lengthen the time that we have before the bridge needs to be, or the structure needs to be replaced. So we're considering that right now. So wanted to mention that to you. In addition to that, Cochrane is moving forward with design of the permanent structure. As you probably know, that work is ongoing. We are going to be working with the Corps of Engineers to submit our 404 permit application relatively soon and get the permitting process started. And we did meet with the state parks folks over Zoom earlier this afternoon. As I mentioned, we will need an easement from state parks, or we're trying to plan for acquiring an easement from state parks. And the question is whether we want to go down that road or not. It's going to be a fairly difficult process. The parks utilize federal funds when they improved Babbler at some point in the past. And when they did that, they essentially deed restricted the park. So what that means is if you come to them and want to get an easement from them, it's a very arduous process to get that approved. And it actually entails going to the federal government and the National Park Service to get authorization to do that. So it's a lengthy process. Best case, in my opinion, best case, you're probably looking at 6 months. Worst case, you might be looking at 2 years to get that approved. But I think more likely 6 months, or a matter of months, not years. Let's put it that way. So that was a very helpful meeting. We did that over Zoom. We'll be forwarding them the information on the project next to start that review process to acquire the easement. And we are also trying to initiate contacts with the other property owner on the west as well, so that we can extend a request to obtain an easement from that property owner. I think if the negotiations go well with the property owner on the west, we do have a possibility that we could omit the easement from the Battler Park property altogether. And given the length of time that might take to acquire it, that is an option that we believe we have. It might result in the cost of the project going up a bit, but it might be worth doing. So it's a lot of information. I apologize, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to get an update on where we're at, and certainly I'll answer any questions if you have any at this time.
City Administrator Cross.
Thank you. Rick did provide a lot of information, and I'd like to add some context to that, just so that you understand where we're coming from. Because he and I have been talking about this quite a bit in the last few days. Councilmember Clark has been quite concerned about that roadway, and has said so in this committee as well as at council. And Rick had said that he had been informed that it was still safe. We did close one of the roads, but he believed it to be safe. He still believes it to be safe. However, he did come to me last week though, and in one of the most recent examinations of the bridge, it looks like it has deteriorated a little more than anticipated. It is slowly deteriorating, but that seems to have accelerated. And so the concern that he expressed to me was at a little higher level. I authorized him then to spend a little over $8,000 then to hire geotechnology to do the GPR, the ground penetrating radar, which will be done next week. That will tell us, quite honestly, which direction we're going to go, because I wanted to get that done sooner rather than later, especially given the level of concern that he was expressing to me. At that time, last week, so the 105 that I just heard now, that's the first time I've heard that number. I was more in the $80,000 range, about 10% or thereabouts of what it's going to cost to replace that structure, which is $850,000. What I was hoping was that if we could find out that spending, well, now $105,000, and that kind of changes my opinion a little bit, but if that bought us 5 years, maybe, depending on the dollar amount, if it had been about 10% of the overall cost, that might have been worth it to fix it and get assurances through measurements, loading, et cetera, the data that we want to have that tells us it would be safe. Then we might not need to address a full blown replacement of nearly $250,000. That number is 105 now, so that it's starting to get on the edge of where we're at. But as Rick just said, it's a $850,000, and that's the last estimate. That number may be higher now. I don't know how recent that number is, but it also is going to entail a fairly significant closure of that. Next Tuesday will be a good dry run. We've been in touch with the captain. We've been in touch with Rockville School District. We have a message board out there, so we'll see how the traffic flow is. We've actually asked the captain to supply a couple officers to help with routing traffic next Tuesday for that 4-hour window. But we'll see how it goes, because that 4-hour window could very quickly turn into a 6-month closure, if not longer. But the thing I want to leave with you all is that we are aware of the significance of this, and we're going to find out on Tuesday, if there's voids, if there are fissures in there that could collapse at any time, or that those don't exist, and that we will officially, with data, supported by data, know that it is okay, and we don't need to panic. So I wanted to add that color to Rick's very thorough and comprehensive explanation to you all. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
I think Councilmember Edens was before me.
I was just gonna say, we've had a talk in another context about why it's important to establish relationships with federal officials and state officials, and we've made efforts to do that. We've hired a lobbyist. This is a perfect example where if we go ahead and need to go through Babler Park for an easement and they have to in turn go through the federal government or one would think for a public safety issue as dire as a bridge that has the potential to collapse, there should be an expedited process. If in the event there isn't, I mean, I would like to think that our city administrator and with the help of our lobbyists that we're paying for can start contacting other federal representatives. And those offices in DC begin calling the National Park Service to say, hey, I'm calling on behalf of constituent services. We have a public safety issue. Because generally speaking, federal offices and state departments don't like when elected officials at any level, put a tweet out that says, hey, this department's ignoring this issue in my state. And so they may be more willing to listen or expedite services if it comes from a DC office and we've contacted them. So I would suggest that route, but don't give up just because it typically takes 6 months. Find out how we can get ahead of that line because it's as important.
Councilmember Clark then.
Okay, so if we were to go ahead with the $105,000 fix, could that be like a beginning of the permanent fix so that we've already gone a ways on that permanent fix and decrease the cost in the final spending of the permanent fix? I'm just really so relieved to see how much work you've done on this, Mr. Brown and Dan and everybody that you've got working on it, because yet that I have been concerned about this. And the fact that you put so much into this and have watched close enough that you've seen it accelerate in deterioration is very commendable. And I think our residents have a lot to owe you a lot just because you've been watching out for them.
Do you want me to respond to that real quickly? So thank you. I appreciate that. And Dan is keeping a close eye on it and measuring. We actually marked it to try to take objective measurements of the separation. So we are doing that and we'll continue to do that. But as far as the expenditure, unfortunately, no, it wouldn't. I was hoping that we could actually follow that course of logic, but no, if we spent the $105,000, essentially what we'd be trying to do is buy us time, but it wouldn't save us any money on the ultimate project. It wouldn't be an improvement that would fold into the ultimate project.
And the reason for that is that if it turns out that we were going to go down the road to spend the 105, that is peering the wings, the soil there and putting in, long nails and so forth to keep that. But the $850,000 is putting in maybe something like a 65-foot, a total replacement of a bridge. So that 105 will, as Rick just said, it'll buy us time, but it won't be able to accrue to the new structure.
Councilmember Clark.
If I might follow up on that, $105,000 is a lot, but if we have to put this off if we find out on Tuesday that it is a problem, the $105,000 is not so much after all to make it safe.
Thank you, and we know that. And I don't say that to be a smart aleck. I'm saying that we will have a decision to make because if that 105, which is a lot of money, but again, it's tough to put a value on safety, of anybody using that bridge right there. But if it only buys us 2 years, it's probably not a wise investment. It's probably better just to bite the bullet and replace it. If we get a guarantee the extent that guarantees exist in this world, and we can get 5 years out of that, it's worth a discussion.
Hmm.
At 2 years, it's not even worth the discussion, in my opinion, anyway.
Okay. Well, that's good there. Yeah, and 105,000 represents 0.6% of our annual operating budget for the city. So to help put things in perspective, it might be an easy decision to make when it comes to safety. Great. Any other questions there? Or if not, we'll move on to the next update. Mr. Brown?
Council members, this next item was requested to be on the agenda, and I know it has come up previously. So we do have the advertisement out right now for the Strecker Crosswalk project. So that project would include the installation of the rapid flashing beacons at the two intersections, Timber Ridge Estates Drive, and then the other one, Engelbrook Drive and Court, the two locations where we have the crosswalks currently striped. So that is being advertised, and the bid opening is next Thursday at 10 a.m. So the goal is to bring that to you at your next meeting in a couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll have some bids that we can present for approval and then take that to council. That's the goal. So bid opening would be the 20th at 10 o'clock. Any questions?
You have a question, Councilman Reed?
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate it. My residents appreciate it. And they just want to see some changes, and I'm looking forward to hopefully multiple options on the bid.
All right. Well, then that would bring us to, let's see, the next part here is for action items. So now we'll get into the public works budget. That. Mr.
Thank you,
Cross?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, again, you have, you had an attachment of that budget for the Public Works Department. We'll start with the expenditure detail, which is the operating side of the house. Same format. You see the line items. Again, I'm not going to go through them. I think they're all pretty self-explanatory as it relates to the operating side of the house. And you can see the 23 budget versus the where we think that 2022 will come in. That's the column labeled estimated 2022. And so at this point, I think I will just simply ask if anybody has any questions about the operating side of the budget, and I'm happy to answer them. And this is Rick's department, so anything I can't answer, he can jump in as well. So,
Councilmember Edens.
I do. Well, I went to what I perceived as a very helpful MML lecture on green initiatives and green cities. And there were two different cities featured, one of which was in St. Louis County and the other was Springfield. And the particular city that did the lecture happened to have an arborist on staff in Public Works that had a level of in-house expertise that we have had to contract out for. We have talked when we have done budgets or contracts for tree removal and replacement or other landscaping replacement about how important, and we're certainly glad that we have that 1 year guarantee where something can be removed. But a lot of times we're seeing things limp along and then maybe die after that and then be replaced at the cost of the city. Or as some of my residents have expressed to me, they feel like they did not get something planted initially of good quality. Now, the city doing the lecture said that what they found was that what they ordered and paid for in the contract was almost never delivered initially. And that it took a member on staff actually inspecting the root balls and the size of the tree ratio and sending it back when it didn't meet specs to get the quality of material that they wanted. Then what they also learned was that and I quote, the correct way to plant a tree was not being done, because maybe the landscaping firm knows how to do it, but the laborers assigned to it were never shown a particular way that the tree should be planted. And so it took that department being out with the individuals planting the trees, almost essentially training them to get the quality of landscaping product and roots, literally roots established, so that that plant didn't die over the next several years. And so what I'm wondering is if this is something that we can kind of do as well. And if so, is that something that our staff can do, or we need to look at increasing a consultant budget for that in the future? I mean, can Andy Berg train us? I mean, I took copious notes about, stock ASNSI Z60.1 doesn't mean anything to me. But he's essentially inspecting ANSI A300 trees and found that the contractors didn't know. I'm wondering if that's what I'm seeing in some of the plants that are dying. So.
Ms. Edens,
Mhm.
you had me at, I wish we had an arborist.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
5 minutes ago when you said that, there is an arborist in this plan. When
Okay,
I
I
went
must
to
have
the
missed that.
department heads and gave them some guidance in terms of their budgets, one was, if you need extra staff, sell me on it, tell me about it. Okay. So Rick and Joe together, Mr. Vunich and Mr. Brown, indicated that an arborist would be very helpful for a number of reasons. I agreed to that with one caveat, that Rick reduced his budget then by somewhat of a corresponding amount that he had built into consultants. What's the DGI?
Mhm.
And so forth. So he was able to accomplish that. So there is an increase in headcount of one, which then is for, and we don't call it an arborist, we would call it something else.
Okay.
But whatever it is, that would be a person on staff who then would oversee each and every planting throughout the city to make sure that it is planted properly, watered properly, cared for properly, monitor it so that we are not replacing trees either within the 1 year guarantee or outside of that. So yes. it's in
Checking
there.
the stock.
It's already in there.
Okay, awesome. I didn't see arborist in giant capital letters, so I didn't absorb that, but I'm so excited to hear that, because I mean, it would have been an added cost to have billed hours for somebody to go out there and inspect all these deliveries. So that's pretty
So
neat.
for the dollars that and it was
Mm-hmm.
expensive to go to the Andy Bergs of the
Mhm.
world, we were spending a lot of money, which is why I said, if you're able to, he was not able to offset the entire cost with including benefits of this individual, but was able to offset almost half of it by taking the dollars out of other line items and then being able to pay for this additional staff.
Well, and it's added a lot of labor time for the Public Works Department that's now freed up to do other things, because they can project manage on other projects that aren't planting related. Sorry. So there's other savings that may not come out in a dollar in terms of efficiency, and you get to do other types of things that are in your wheelhouse. So
As I said, you had me at, I
excellent.
wish I
Had
had,
you at
I wish we
arborist.
had an
Okay.
arborist. So thank
Huzzah.
you.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, and I will say one other thing too. The city also does 3-year contracts with residents for watering. And I said, yeah, but how on earth, if the resident moves, how do you know? And are they made aware by a real estate agent that does the household sign the contract, or does the person that lives there sign the contract? And how does that work? And they said, well, we have no idea if the household moves, and they're lucky if they tell anybody. Sometimes they tell us and sometimes they don't. So maybe we can look into doing that as well, as some sort of, contract with the
Yeah.
resident. So thanks.
I just wanted to follow up on the planning. Well, maybe I should just say this. We were going to have an update at our next meeting relative to the planning project, so I can provide a little more information on where we're at with that. But I think a lot of the items that you mentioned, Councilmember Edens, are things that we're very aware of. And when we brought Davey on to help us out, those were the very things we wanted them to help us with, frankly, because we felt like we weren't doing that. So, and I think they've gone a long ways towards addressing those items. Are they perfect? No, I'm not going to say they are, neither will our arborist either, but it's been a step in the right direction. The more you have somebody out there watching them, the better you're going to have a result. Now, Dan's helping us out this year with the project, as well as Davey. So bringing this person on, which this is the first time I've heard it confirmed. Which we've talked about. Hopefully we can have them basically take on all the trees and all of the things that are growing. Because that would be something they would be much more capable of doing than the engineers we have on our staff or street superintendents or whatnot.
I'll leave you with one last dream for the future that piggybacks the work that you guys do in WETF. And boy, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a citywide led initiative that this new employee did for honeysuckle cutback? Oh my goodness.
All right. You got a question? Oh, Councilmember Clark.
I do not have a question. I have a comment. And I know, Mr. Brown, that you're used to hearing me with complaints, but this time it's not a complaint. I just want to give you kudos for this Public Works budget, because I read through it and the department purpose is it outlines very well what is to be done and the desire or the need of the city. And you're very specific with your goals, talking about why it's important, who is involved, how you'll achieve the goal. You have measurables within your goals for evaluating the progress toward the goal and the end point of the goal. You know when you're finished by just reading it. They're very achievable goals that you have. They're not too easy where there's no point, and they're not impossible goals to meet. You've outlined the constraints, the limitations, the just the legwork that's involved in doing them. They're very relevant, and they are time bound. So you have a time frame showing when, how much time it's going to take and the percentage of work that's going to be done in that time. You've made goals and not listing tactics to get to those goals, and they are very much SMART goals. So I just want to give you kudos for that.
Councilmember Jaxie.
And I just got to piggyback and give you kudos. You and I talked earlier, and I know that you know that I have a constituent that's concerned about a safety issue down on Allenton Road, and I know that's still on your scope. So I really do appreciate what you've done, Rick, as of late, and would echo what Councilmember Clark just said with this budget. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Clark.
And I would move that we approve this budget.
All right, made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Jaxie. Any other questions on approving of the budget there? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, that passes. Move on to the next, Rick, the 2022 Road and Bridge Fund.
This is actually the 2023 Road and Bridge Fund that we'll be talking about.
Yep, sorry.
That's okay. Nope. We're still in
I'm making sure
2022.
I'm reading off the agenda right there.
Okay, now we start talking about some big ticket items, some big dollar items. We had to do some adjustments to this budget. There's some big dollars that are projected to be spent. The Road and Bridge Fund, the Capital Projects Fund. Actually, which one are we on? Are we on the capital improvement first? Where are we? No, we're doing the Road and Bridge first. Okay, that's fine. Road and Bridge Fund. Again, you had the documentation attached to the agenda. The source of revenue for this is the motor fuel gas tax received from the state of Missouri and the road and bridge tax that we get from St. Louis County. Those are the sources of revenue that generates the anticipated revenue of almost $2.7 million in revenue. And then you can see again the improvements in terms of roadway improvements and capital maintenance as it relates to the road and bridge fund, the items that Rick has identified that he wants to tackle in 2023, totaling $2.9 million, $2,865,000 to be exact. Two large items in there having to do with the asphalt pavement resurfacing and with the concrete pavement replacement. That's about almost $1.9 million right there. So again, I won't go through all the line items and just open it up for any questions for Rick or I in terms of the projects that he believes that we need to address in 2023.
Any questions? Oh, seeing none, no questions then on the road and bridge fund there. So therefore, if there aren't any, then I'll look for a motion for approval of the road and bridge fund. Maybe by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second on approving the road and bridge fund? Councilmember Jackson. All right. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, then all those in favor of approving the 2023 budget for the road and bridge fund, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? The motion passes. All right, we'll move on then to the next item here under for action. The last one is the combined capital improvement sales tax fund for 2023.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be the last budget that we'll be discussing tonight. The capital improvement sales tax fund, the source of revenue for that is the city's half-cent capital improvement sales tax. And that combined with a small amount of interest generates about $2.5 million of revenue projected for 2023. But we're also anticipating about $2.3 million in a combination of federal and state grants to generate almost $4.9 million in revenue. The expenditures from this fund are expenditures not only from public works projects, roadway improvements, bridge construction, reconstruction, but also the parks. And obviously we'll ignore the parks. But if you go into the detail, the 2023 for the capital improvement, again, you can notice the roadway improvements, the bridge construction, and other capital items. And again, Rick can talk in detail about the large items having to do with, there's East Avenue and Center Avenue reconstruction, which I know is near and dear to Chair Garitano's heart. Manchester Taylor Road resurfacing, signal upgrades, that's $1.8 million. There's the J turns on 100 and the left turn lanes on 100 that we have discussed. There's a bridge, there's culverts on Bouquet Road, and the bridge 3-107 replacement is what we talked about earlier, the $850,000. And then other items below under other capital, most of which have to do, other than the watershed and the electric vehicle recharging station, have to do with this public works projects. So and then you'll notice though that there are grants. So for instance, the $1.8 million in the Manchester and Taylor Road is offset by grants totaling a little over $1.4 million. And you'll see that on the pages. So again, I won't go through all the detail, just want to hit the big ticket items and then open it up for any questions for Rick or I.
Okay, Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I was looking through, I guess it's part of the roadway improvements. There's a couple segments of the Strecker Road sidewalk in a couple different places in here. Is that off the top of my head? I'm not remembering what section, the difference between C and E and F. So is that the normal part of the sidewalk that we've been talking about for a few years, or is that a different part of Strecker Road?
Councilmember, the sidewalk segment C is the one that we've been talking about. The initial priority was segment C. It is still, it's been pushed to next year, so it is funded for 2023. And then the segment after that, we show design potentially starting on that segment as well. So there's monies to essentially continue that in the 5-year plan as well. Those are still retained.
So if memory serves, this segment C, there's a bit of an issue with getting the easement necessary to put the sidewalk in, correct?
It's a good way to describe it. Yes, sir.
So I'm just wondering, I mean, I know that my folks, and I'm sure Ms. Eden's folks would very much like to get that sidewalk put in, but at the same time, I guess I'm curious, how do we if we just keep having to go down the road, does that money just keep moving year after year, or is that get put somewhere else at some point?
No, if it is not spent in 2023, it just doesn't get spent. And then when we're putting together the budget for 2024, same question will be asked of Mr. Brown in terms of what projects he anticipates in 2024. So it just doesn't get spent. But I would like to point out that the sidewalk that we're talking about on Strecker Road, just to refresh everyone's memory, initially we were talking about doing it on the, I guess, west side. We're talking about west and east side, I guess, as opposed to north or south. How do you define it? Just north or south?
I want to say north and
North and
south,
south.
but
So the south
arc-
side, the south side is the one that is problematic. Okay. And so in terms of getting an easement, so that doesn't seem likely in the near term. However, in conversations with Mr. Brown, he's indicated that it would be preferable to build it on the north side anyway, due to easier to build, less cost, and don't have to deal with easement issues. There are some issues now with the north side until we can finish other items, and I won't go into detail here about what those items are, but you all know. So once those issues are resolved, then we could probably move forward with that Strecker Road on the north side, which I think in the last conversation we had at council or whatever, most people seem to be in favor of anyway. That I think Mr. Bartoni was indicating that was preferable anyway, because it was more, it tied in some sidewalks and so forth. So right now it's budgeted for 2023, but that hinges on some other dominoes falling first.
Great, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the last budget here, the capital improvement? All right, do we have, I don't think we have a motion on the floor, do we? Councilmember Farmer, hey, Carla, right, we didn't get a motion yet. Yeah, okay.
I'll make a motion.
So, made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Edens. Any other questions or discussion on this? Seeing none, then all those in favor of approving the 2023 capital projects fund, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, that is approved. Then, yep, we have some items here and even more that will target for the Tuesday, October 25th meeting. It's at 5:30. So anything else? Anything on the miscellaneous?
Mr. Chair, I would like to just point out one thing under the topics for inclusion on future agendas. When Mr. Brown and I were putting this together, we obviously pushed things out from tonight's meeting to the second meeting in October. But we inadvertently included some line items for November. And in fact, we don't have a meeting in November because we have 2 in October. So what is listed here to be addressed, hopefully, or tentatively in November would actually be December.
Okay. All right, is there a motion for adjournment? Made by Councilmember Farmer. Councilmember Clark. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? The motion passes. All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.